How's it going, you beautiful people? My name is Jesus Season Dragon, and welcome back to another Magic the Gathering budget deck building. Today we look at one of the most illustrious commanders, the Dragon, consistently ranking in the top 10 of the most used commanders over the years. Of course, the Dragon captures a very high price tag. At this point, nearly $20. However, at some points it was worse, reaching even up to 60 or higher. So here's the question. Could we even make a deck around $50 with the Dragon in question? Most likely not, but if we took the Dragon's price out of the equation, perhaps we could make a deck that still fits within our budget and has a decent bit of power behind it. Let's find out. I'll be back with you in a moment to discuss the deck. I have returned, and it appears that, with my deck and the cheapest printing of the Dragon from Commander Masters, we have exactly hit our budget of $50. Now, let's dive into the deck and see what cards there are. We'll go for which category has the least cards to the last category that has the most. So, let's dive in. First, for the Planeswalker, we have Kiora the Behemoth Beckoner. Whenever a creature with power 4 or greater enters the battlefield under your control, you draw a card, and her -1 ability, your only ability, allows you to untap target permanents. Since most dragons have at the very least power 4, if not more, that means that once Kiora is down, every dragon means another card draw, allowing us to very quickly fill up our hand with more dragons, which we can then play. Moving on now to instants, we have first Path to Exile and Swords to the Plowshares. They both exile a target creature, making them very good for removing particular things you don't like. And then Counterspell Dragon's Fire, and constantly deal a good amount of damage to creatures you dislike, particularly if you choose dragons with greater than 3 power, which is quite common. Spit Flame as a constant source of 4 damage if you can keep on paying the red to return it to your hand each time you cast a dragon in order to pump out the damage on smaller creatures that you just don't want to put up with. Good for sliver decks. Moving on to enchantments now, we first have the Acolyte of Bahamut. So long as the Dragon is out, the first dragon spell you cast each turn will cost 2 less. And if you have the mana to play the Dragon, you will have the power to play, at the very least, 2 dragons a turn with this. Then Bower Passage means that unless your opponent has reach, you're going to be hitting them with your dragons for free and killing them very quickly unless they come up with a solution. Garruk's Uprising has the same thing as Kiora Behemoth Beckoner, but it gives your creatures trample, allowing you to, even if they do have weaker flyers, smash through and deal a good amount of combat damage. Rising of the Day gives your creatures haste, and legendary creatures +1/+0. A grand majority of this deck is legendary creatures, so you will be getting a lot of value off of that. Crucible of Fire gives all your dragons just a flat +3/+3. Frontier Siege, once you enters the battlefield, choose Conjure Dragons. Beginning of your main phase, add 2 green, or whenever a creature with flying enters the battlefield under your control, it can fight a dark creature you don't control. Either one of these is very, very good, but Cons is better for early game, and Dragons is better for mid game when your opponent has creatures that you just want to break down. And then Warstorm Surge, if you're constantly playing dragons, you'll be able to use this ability to blast down your opponents very, very quickly. And then moving on to sorceries, we start out with Earthquake. It's a very good damaging, removing spell, as it won't affect much of your board as most dragons have flying, and probably most of your opponents don't, therefore allowing you to just Earthquake and swallow them up. Green Sun's Twilight can be a very good game ender if you can get a very powerful creature up on the board but if not, early game, it can be used to just grab an extra land or an extra creature into your hand. Or if you have 6 mana, just straight up cheat a giant creature into play early. I'm sure your opponents would like that. And then Farseek, Rampant Growth, Cultivate, Kodama's Reach are all different ways to draw lands. Draw cards, jeez. No, that's something else we're getting to. Drawing as many lands as you can while you defend your deck, and also get to play your giant dragons way faster. And then Painful Truths, you can draw up to 3 cards at the cost of 3 life, but that 3 life isn't really a big deal unless it's going to kill you. In which case, I think if you manage to kill yourself with this, you have my sincerest respect. And then Crux of Fate as a second board wipe. Destroy all dragons or all non-dragons. Most often you'll choose non-dragons as you're playing a dragon deck. But if someone decides to get a bit cheeky and is also running a dragon deck, or tries to steal your creatures, this could be a way to get them all out of the picture. Moving in with artifacts, we of course have Sol Ring, because we always have Sol Ring. It is a necessity. We are playing Commander here. It is not banned yet, so we will always use it. Arcane Signet can tap for 1 of any color, which is very nice. Armillary Sphere can be sacrificed to grab 2 more lands from your library into your hand. Very good if you just want to ramp. Fuck. Galleon Orb of Dragonkind can tap for a red, and if that plays a dragon, they gain haste, allowing them to strike immediately. If you can use this on the Dragon, whoo boy are we having fun here. Commander Sphere can also tap for any color, but can be sacrificed for an extra card. Darksteel Ingot taps 1 mana of any color and is indestructible to allow you to protect from anyone trying to blow up your artifacts. Dragon's Horde is extra card draw and extra mana ramp. Dragonkind tap for green, and when it casts a dragon creature spell, they get a +1/+1 counter and gain hexproof until your next turn, meaning that your opponent can't instantly remove them unless they have a counter spell or a board wipe, therefore putting them in an awkward position. And then Dragon Arch, spend 2 and tap it, you can put a multicolored creature card from your hand onto the battlefield. A good chunk of our more powerful and useful dragons are multicolored, so therefore having this, just bring one into play for 2 mana, is a very, very useful ability. And now we move into creatures. This is one of the longest categories by far, so be prepared for a lightning round. Won't go into much detail, and I'll just describe the general purpose. Scaled Nurturer, mana ramp, and life gain. Dragonlord Servant reduces the cost of our dragons. Carlisa allows us to scry and cast dragon spells from the top of our library. Dragon Speaker Shaman vastly reduces the cost of our dragons. Rivaz of the Claw allows us to ramp for dragons and cast dragon spells if they die, although only once. Dromoka the Eternal is a powerful dragon that puts +1/+1 counters on our other creatures. Ganax is a decent dragon, and whenever we cast another dragon, we get a treasure token for more mana ramp. Kolodon makes our dragons bigger. Lozon deals damage whenever we cast a dragon spell to anything that's not a commander. You can also use this on your opponent's face to bring them down. Sunscorched Regents can put a little bit of attacks on our opponent casting spells to maybe make them think twice about what they want to do each turn. Thrakkus can vastly boost the power of our dragons whenever he attacks. Wazatoru makes your opponent sacrifice creatures whenever she deals combat damage, and if they don't, you can create a token, which can then put out even more damage. Amethyst Dragon is a decent dragon with flying and haste, and Explosive Crystal allows for some shenanigans that I will get into a little bit later. Birdmate Dragon creates more dragons when it enters the battlefield, basically becoming an 8/8 for 5 mana. Crystal Dragon can allow us to get destroyed artifacts, enchantments, or legendary creatures back to our hands to cast them again. The Emerald Dragon's Dissonant Wave can counter target activated or triggered abilities from a non-creature source. Funny enough, this actually prevents someone from winning the game with Thassa's Oracle. Green Dragon, when it enters the battlefield until end of turn, whenever a creature an opponent controls is dealt damage, destroy it. This can be used with Shattering Crystal, deal 1 damage to multiple creatures and destroy them. Or with Earthquake, if X equals 1, it will deal 1 damage to all creatures and destroy them all. That one will probably get your opponents a little salty. Intent the Dreamer deals combat damage, pay 3, deal the top card of your library. You can cast it without paying the mana cost, as long as Intent remains on the battlefield. Red Dragon enters the battlefield, deals 4 damage to each opponent. When Ryuze dies, deals 5 damage to each creature without flying. Savage Ventmaw, when it attacks, you add 6 mana and you don't lose it until the end of your turn. Silumgar grants your opponent's creatures -1/-1 until end of turn for each dragon that attacks them. You can use this to grind them down into nothingness. Steel Hellkite can destroy non-land permanents if you pump some mana into it and hit them with Steel Hellkite. Teneb the Harvester can spend 3 mana to bring back creatures from either your graveyard or your opponent's graveyard. Topaz Dragon can grant your creatures Death Touch, putting your opponent in a tight spot if they have the power to block your dragons in the first place. White Dragon can put one of your opponent's creatures out for 2 turns. Atarka the World Render gains double strike whenever a dragon you control attacks, dealing a lot of damage, particularly in combo with something like Thrakkus. The Black Dragon grants target creature opponent controls -3/-3 until end of turn. You can use this on a slippery, indestructible creature to just blow it up. And Bladewing Arisen allows you to bring back a dragon from your graveyard and grant your dragon creatures a boost until end of turn. Blue Dragon can weaken various creatures your opponent controls very versatilely. And Deathbringer Regent functions as another board wipe so long as there are 5 or more other creatures on the battlefield. You can use this if you're down and out, and cast it for 6 mana to destroy the board. Ojutai can allow a lot of mass tapping that can prevent your opponents from playing very much, as most of their creatures or artifacts can be tapped down, vastly limiting their offensive, defensive, or casting options. And then Sapphire Dragon is a counter spell, or whenever it attacks or blocks, you can just scry 2, all you get to dig through your deck quite a bit faster. And we come to our final category, the lands. Prepare for the lightning round, as I barely need to explain lands. Taps for 3, taps for all colors, can add any, and as long as you put enough charge counters on it. Taps for 3, sacrifice search for basic, we have 3 forests. Taps for 3, can be tapped for 2 mana to cast legendary spells, can bring back a dragon, we have 3 islands. Taps for 3, 3 mountains, Mystic Monastery, taps for 3, Nomad Elbows, taps for 3, Opulent Palace, taps for 3, Wrath of Ancestry lets you scry whenever you cast a dragon, 3 planes, Roguery Tower gives us no maximum hand size, taps for 3, taps for 3, taps for 3, allows us to cast more dragons, we have 3 swamps, Death of the False God, taps for 2 as long as we have 5 lands, tap sacrifice for a basic, and allows us to cast a dragon. And one extra category is upgrades/side grades. These are things that you might want to consider adding to the board, adding to the deck, if you desire a budget expansion, or to try different things. First of all, Herald's Horde decreases your dragon's price even more, and allows you to look at your library and draw extra cards. Sarkhan's Soul of Flame reduces the cost of your dragons, and Sarkhan could become a copy of one. Winged Wards allows you to draw extra cards, and will most often have its cost reduced. Rith grants your dragons Ward 2 and creates more tokens. Draconic Lore costs 4 and allows you to draw 3 cards. And Lathliss, whenever you cast a dragon, you can get an extra token. And now, before we go, I would like to offer a summary of the deck overall. It costs approximately $50, perhaps more or less, depending on how pricing works out in your region, for 100 cards. With an average mana cost of 3.77, largely reduced by the cost of the Ur Dragon, and offering us 31 dragons out of 34 total creatures, with only 3 being non-dragons. Largely a equal color pie, except for 3 extra green, which comes from Scale Nurturer and the con side of Frontier Siege. This makes sense as we largely have green and red mana in the deck. Most of our cards cost an average of 5 mana, with the second place being 3 mana. And that should be all. If you want to find this deck, I will leave it in the description. For now, if you like this video, please like, comment, subscribe, and share. Reese of Seizing Dragon, signing off.